Master of sharp replies and powerful silence, he does not chase the world's approval. He earns its respect. In every hall, in every press meet, he stands as India's shield and India's voice, steady, unapologetic, unstoppable. And here are 5 striking moments when he faced the toughest global questions and left even the harshest critics speechless. The setting was familiar. A foreign journalist threw the same old allegations with a sharp undertone. He asked whether South Asia would ever see peace, hinting that terrorism came from Delhi, Kabul, and even India itself. He dragged the Kashmir issue into it, waving outdated UN resolutions as if time had not moved forward. For years, such questions had been India's burden. They painted the nation as the source of conflict instead of the victim of cross-border terror. They twisted Pakistan's export of terrorism into a dispute and framed India's right to defend itself as aggression. But this time the reply was different. Jaishankar did not blink. He did not defend. He turned the question inside out. Calmly and with precision, he said the wrong minister had been asked. If you want to know how long terrorism will last, you should ask the ministers of Pakistan, because they are the ones who spread it. The hall fell silent, and then came the real strike. The world is not blind. The world is not forgetful. The world is not foolish. Nations that nurture terrorism cannot keep hiding behind excuses. They are being exposed. They are being remembered, and they will be held accountable. In that one answer, India's position was made crystal clear. No longer would it sit on defense in this debate. The blame was sent back to where it belonged. Months later, in another press hall, another sharp question was thrown, this time from Europe. A journalist, speaking with superiority, demanded to know why India was buying Russian oil during the Ukraine war. The suggestion was pointed. India was weakening sanctions. India was fueling Moscow's war chest. The question carried weight. Western capitals wanted the world to see India as selfish, morally weak. But Jaishankar was ready, with facts, data, and clarity. He reminded the hall that between February and November, the European Union itself had imported more fossil fuels from Russia than the next 10 nations combined. Europe's oil imports were 6 times more than India's. Its gas imports were countless times higher since India imports none. Even Europe's coal imports were 50% greater than India's. And then came the dagger. Perhaps Europe should look at its own record before pointing fingers at India. That was not just an answer. It was a mirror held up to hypocrisy. Those who tried to lecture India were guilty of double standards themselves. For millions of Indians watching, it was a moment of pride. For the first time, the Western press had to face the plain truth, that their own governments were guilty of what they accused others of. But the pressure did not end there. Another journalist rose, this time quoting Joseph Borrell, the European Union's foreign policy chief. He had suggested that India was laundering Russian crude by refining it into oil products and selling it back to Europe. A silent threat of sanctions hung in the air. This was a serious allegation. If accepted, it could damage India's reputation. But again, Jaishankar's reply was calm, sharp, and devastating. He pointed out the very rule that Europe itself had written under Council Regulation 833 of 2014. Once crude oil is substantially transformed in a third country, it is no longer considered of Russian origin. That was Europe's law, not India's loophole. With that one reply, the weakness of the question was exposed. The journalist had come expecting India to falter. Instead, the minister reminded him of his own council's regulation. The meaning was clear. India was not breaking the rules. India was following the very system Europe had created. And in that moment, India showed it was not a junior partner in this dialogue. It was an equal, confident in its choices, unapologetic in its sovereignty. The next challenge was not about oil or wars, but about democracy itself. A Western journalist mentioned reports by Freedom House and VDem, organizations that had downgraded India's democratic ratings. He asked whether this so-called decline would hurt India's rise as a global power. The undertone was sharp. India, despite its rise, was still being judged. Its success, the question implied, was still conditional on Western approval. But Jaishankar refused to play that game. He dismissed the reports as biased, filled with errors, and guided by ideology. He pointed out a deeper reality, that the real discomfort was not about democracy, but about India refusing to seek validation from the West. It was hypocrisy, he said, for self-declared guardians of democracy to dictate how India should be judged. India's legitimacy came not from foreign think tanks, but from the votes of its own people. For Indian viewers, this moment was deeply emotional. For centuries, the country had lived under foreign judgment, colonial, political, intellectual. Now its foreign minister was saying clearly that India would define itself, not wait for approval from anyone else. Then came the storm from Canada. In the middle of a political dispute, reporters asked Jaishankar if India had been given intercepted documents linking its officials to a controversial killing. The question was blunt. Had India seen the evidence? Yes or no? It was a trap. A yes could be spun into an admission. A no could be painted as denial, but Jaishankar did not fall into it. With clarity, he explained that India had received no documents, no proof. He repeated what he had already said. If any specific and relevant information were shared, India would examine it. Until then, there was nothing to consider. And then, with sharp precision, he asked his own rhetorical question. If such documents truly existed, would India not already be reviewing them? In that instant, speculation lost its power. The weight of suggestion collapsed. The reporter had no line left to pursue. These 5 moments were not just isolated exchanges. Together, they showed a shift in India's place in the world. For decades, Indian leaders often answered foreign questions carefully, defensively, sometimes even apologetically. But Jaishankar's way is different. He does not just defend India, he reclaims the entire story. He refuses to accept false assumptions hidden in unfair questions. He calls out hypocrisy. He uses hard facts. He reminds the world that India has earned its place at the table. And behind his words lies something larger, the pride of 1.4 billion people who will no longer be spoken down to. In every hall, every press briefing, every stage, one truth becomes clear. India is no longer asking for validation. It is demanding respect. For too long, the world has taken from India its soldiers, its markets, its resources, its silence. But rarely has the world given India the dignity it deserved. Through Jaishankar, the world now sees a nation that will not bow to double standards, will not be guilt-tripped, and will never again be silenced. Today, the world listens to India's voice, steady, strong, and unapologetic. And tomorrow, as other nations rise, they too will remember this example, that real respect is never gifted, it is earned. The question is no longer if India is ready for the world. The real question is whether the world is ready for an India that refuses to say sorry for standing tall. But the story does not stop with 5 powerful moments in front of cameras. Those moments were sparks, but behind them burns a larger fire. It is the shift in how India speaks to the world. What makes Jaishankar's style so striking is not just his sharp comebacks, but the deep foundation beneath them. For decades, Indian diplomacy was guided by restraint, soft words, and careful tones that often came from a sense of imbalance. India was once an economy still finding its feet, careful not to upset stronger powers. But today, the ground has changed. With growing economic strength, strategic weight, and military confidence, India no longer enters the room as a follower. It walks in as a nation that knows its worth. Jaishankar's words carry weight because they reflect this change. When he faces reporters or world leaders, he is not speaking only as a minister. He speaks as the voice of over 1 billion citizens whose patience has ended with double standards. He carries centuries of suppressed dignity and channels it into precise, unapologetic language. The world notices because it is rare, Most nations either bend under pressure or burst out in anger. India, through him, does neither. It does not bow and it does not shout. It speaks with clarity that cannot be dismissed. That is why even critics pause when he replies. Think of how he frames sovereignty. For years, India was told its decisions must fit Western expectations. What to buy, who to trade with, how to conduct politics. But when Jaishankar is asked about Russia, China, or even Western relations, his answer is steady. India will decide based on its national interest, not to please others, not to seek validation, but because that is what strong nations must do. He often says, Europe must grow out of the mindset that its problems are the world's problems, but the world's problems are not Europe's problems. That one line captures a truth rarely spoken. It flips centuries of assumed authority. It reminds the West that India is not here to be schooled, but to be heard as an equal. This style is powerful because it is both logical and firm. He does not throw insults. He exposes contradictions. He does not argue for effect. He reasons with facts. When asked about global oil trade, he does not just say India has the right to buy. He points out that Europe itself has imported 6 times more than India. Numbers crush rhetoric. Facts silence bias. That is why his replies resonate not only in India, but across Africa, Asia, and Latin America. Many nations see in him a diplomat who dares to say what they too have long felt, that the rules of global politics have been written for the few, while the many are ordered to obey. Jaishankar's rise as a world voice is tied to India's rise as a partner others cannot overlook. From technology to trade, from medicine to defense, India's role has become central. The pandemic proved this clearly. While wealthy nations hoarded vaccines, India became the pharmacy of the world, delivering doses to countries that would have been abandoned. And when asked why India did it, Jaishankar's reply was simple: because it was the right thing to do. That mix of principle and practicality gives his words moral strength. When later he speaks about sovereignty or hypocrisy, the world remembers that India acted with generosity when others did not. Another important part of his approach is how he refuses to let India be cornered into identity debates. When Western journalists raise questions on democracy, minorities, or free speech, his response is not defensive. He does not plead for approval. Instead, he points out contradictions. He reminds them that flaws exist in every democracy, including theirs. He highlights Western histories of colonization, racial injustice, and social inequality, yet they still claim the right to lecture others. By holding up the mirror, he changes the dynamic. The West is no longer the examiner. India is no longer the pupil. The exchange is between equals. This new confidence matters deeply because it sets an example for the global South. Nations long treated as second class in global politics now see another path. They see it as possible to resist pressure without isolation, to speak firmly without losing respect, to stand upright without aggression. In Jaishankar's calm but strong answers, they find a model for how sovereignty can be defended in a globalized age. Slowly, this model is spreading. African leaders, Southeast Asian diplomats, and Latin American ministers are beginning to echo the same language of fairness and balance. India's voice is becoming the voice of many. Equally important is how this style is reshaping India's own mindset. For decades, Indians abroad often watched world debates with a sense of frustration. They saw their country blamed unfairly, their achievements overlooked, their struggles dismissed. But today, when Jaishankar speaks, Indians feel represented. They feel their story is finally told with precision and dignity. Social media fills with clips of his replies, not because they are fiery, but because they are firm and fair. Each answer restores a little more pride. Each moment chips away at centuries of being spoken down to. Behind this confidence lies India's real growth across every field. Economic progress has placed India among the world's largest economies. Military modernization has strengthened its position in a turbulent region. Technological breakthroughs, from digital systems to space missions, show India is no longer a country waiting for help, but a rising power offering solutions. Jaishankar's words cut deeper because they are backed by real achievement. His diplomacy is respected because the India he represents has weight of its own. Yet he is not only reacting to critics, he is shaping a vision of how nations should relate in this century. In speeches and interviews, he often emphasizes multipolarity, a world not dominated by one or two powers, but balanced across many. He argues respect must move in all directions, not just from the weak to the strong. This thought resonates in a time when smaller nations feel suffocated by great power pressure. Through him, India is becoming the voice of balance, the advocate of fairness. The real change, however, is psychological. For too long, India was conditioned to seek approval. Colonial history had trained it to ask for acceptance. Post-independence struggles made it cautious. But now, with new strength, that mindset is breaking. Jaishankar's tone is proof. He does not sound like someone asking for a seat at the table, but like someone who belongs there by right. And once that shift happens, it cannot be undone. This new India does not deny its challenges. Poverty, inequality, and internal debates still exist, but it refuses to let these challenges be weaponized against it by those who have their own unresolved issues. It insists that every nation has the right to grow on its own terms, and that insistence is what the world is slowly learning to respect. This approach will matter even more as global tensions rise, as conflicts spread, as economies stumble. Nations will look for steady voices. They will search for leaders who speak calmly in chaos, with reason in noise. Jaishankar has already shown that India can be that voice. The respect he commands now will only grow as India's weight in the world increases. And so the story continues. Every press room, every summit, every interview becomes another page in a larger story. A story where India is no longer defined by others but defines itself. A story where accusations are not absorbed but turned back. A story where the world is finally forced to ask not what India owes them, but what they owe to India. Tomorrow, new questions will come. They will be asked in Washington, in Brussels, in Beijing, in Ottawa. They will be framed with suspicion, arrogance, and doubt. But India is ready, because as long as its representatives speak with the same calm, the same confidence, the same refusal to apologize, the answers will echo louder than the questions. And that is the true transformation. India has stopped waiting for permission. It has stopped lowering its voice. It has stopped letting others write its narrative. Through Jaishankar, through its diplomacy, through its rising strength, India has found its own language, calm, precise, and unshaken.